there. I don't know if you guys have noticed this either, but the days we're living in, the world we're living in, is kind of a world of change, a world of revolution. Like, does anyone remember, like, Egypt, Libya, the stuff that happened recently? It's been in the news, like, you guys following what I'm saying? Yeah, right? Like, stuff is happening like crazy. Am I right? Right. Like, I mean, for something that's a little more close to home, I don't know if we have any nerds in the room, but SOPA, does that ring a bell? We kind of stuck it to the man, right? Yeah? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And we're like, kind of like not a violent revolt, but a revolt nonetheless. Like, there's change happening around us. In this world, in this plane we inhabit, there is change here. And yet for many of us, I think a lot of us can say, especially being in Colorado Springs, that I don't know, how many of you guys have ever revolted? A few? Right. I see the few that raise their hands as jokes. But none of us are like, yeah, we're revolutionists. Yeah, like, we're going to start the French Revolution. No, we're not going to do that. Bad idea. But I want to let you guys know that through Christ, through the power that's inside of us, and what we're going to see from Jesus tonight is that he, in a way, is a revolutionist. That he radically transformed not just the physical world, not just the world around us, but he also radically transformed the spiritual realm. That everything he does is contrary to how the world works and goes against it. And yet, we don't pursue such change. Think about that. Do you pursue seeing people's lives changed? Do you pursue God's justice being presented? Do you pursue revolutionary thoughts? Not bad ones, but pure, holy change. And what we're going to see tonight is we're going to see how Jesus started this process, but also to how people in the world respond to him, and then how people more closely related to us respond to him. So let's open up to Mark 6, 1 through 6, and it says this. Jesus left there and went into his hometown accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. "Where did this man get these things?" they asked. "What is this wisdom that has been given him, that he even does miracles? Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "Only in his hometown, among his relatives and his own house, is a prophet without honor. He could not do any miracles there except lay hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village." So what's going on here? We've seen Jesus, like, doing some pretty crazy things. The last thing we saw him do was he was with Jairus, and he raised a little girl from the dead, And so immediately after that moment, according to Mark, what he did, he's like, "I'm going home." And they're like, okay. And he gets to his hometown, and what happens? He can't do anything because he goes into the synagogue, and he says that only in his hometown is a prophet without honor. So he's teaching people these things in his hometown where he grew up, and like, people are like, we know you. Like, Bill over here has a table built by you. You're a carpenter, right? Right. We eat on Bill's table all the time, dude. Yeah, and like, they're just discrediting him because he doesn't meet their standards. That they don't have a place for a carpenter teaching them. That doesn't comprehend to them. And they're like, dude, no, you didn't go to school. You're not a Pharisee. We grew up with you. Your brothers are actually over there, and your sisters are over there. And like, who do you think you are? And so nothing happened. And this raises a huge question that we have to deal with, that you guys have to catch this point. In verse 5, can we go there real quick? He could not do any miracles there except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. This raises a very serious question. You guys are going to see this kind of used against Christianity. A lot of atheists will be like, oh, so your God, he doesn't have power, does he? Only if you believe in him does he have power. No, that's not what this is saying at all. If you read this, like that, you're missing the point. Jesus' power, God's power, is not contingent, is not reliant on your level of faith. It's like, oh, if I have 100% faith level, he's going to move mountains today. And then if you're like, oh, I have 10%, so I might be able to say something nice to you, maybe. Through Jesus, through the Holy Spirit, yay! No, that's not what it is. That's not where it's at. It is not this level of like, I have to recharge my batteries every now and then. It's not like that. God doesn't need anything from us. He has all the power in the universe. His power is not contingent upon our faith level, but his level of self-exposure is. That there's only a certain amount he can do to make it clear to you that I'm the Son of God. And if you don't want to accept that, I've already done everything I know to do. He wasn't speaking to them in any kind of twisted way or anything. He wasn't doing anything like mischievous or anything. He was telling them the truth about the things of the kingdom of heaven. And they're like, you're a carpenter, dude. And so he's like, I can't show myself if you're not willing to see myself. And so that's how the world is kind of looking at Jesus, that they see that there's something there, but they're not ready for it. Then we see how some other people kind of look at him. So I want you guys to remember this next moment about his disciples, starting in verse 7. If we could get that up there. There we are. Calling the 12 to him, he sent them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over evil spirits. These were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff. No bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not an extra tunic. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, shake the dust off your feet when you leave as a testimony against them. They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick people with oil and healed them. So what's going on in this moment? Let's think about this like actually in the perspective of what's going on. Jesus just was at his hometown, okay? Follow me. Just at his hometown. What happens there? People are like, nah, you're a carpenter. No, we're not going to listen to you. And what does he immediately do? He looks at his disciples. He's like, all right, boys, go. And what would you do in that moment? Like, you're following this guy. You just see the guy get rejected, and he's like, hey, I got this great idea, okay? We're going to go out. You guys are going to go out, and you're going to preach and teach and heal. And you'd be like, you're crazy. No. I just saw you get rejected, and you want me to go teach? Like, that's a bad plan, actually. We're not going to do that. Like, seriously, what would you do in that situation? If you saw some guy basically get verbally torn apart, like for whatever he was preaching, and then he tells you to go preach that same message to every town around the area. That's insanity right there. That's crazy. And yet, what have these guys been doing up until this point? And in chapter 2, this is when he called these guys out and brought them to himself. And what have they been doing in that point? They have been sitting there, and they have been watching, and they have been seeing him do works. And they sit behind him, and they watch what he's doing. And this is, in fact, great leadership, where you guys, as youth, need to be doing this. where you find someone and you hitch yourself to them and you start watching them and you start following them and you listen to what they say, and as they follow Christ, you follow Christ as they're following it, and you're both learning and you're both going together, and then eventually you become awesome and you slingshot past them. That's good mentorship. And that's what he's saying here. He's like, hey, you guys have seen this, go. And they do. And that results in this huge next moment that is going to show us why there has to be change. Go to the verse 14. It's a big chunk, so get ready. King Herod heard about this, for Jesus' name had become well known. Some were saying John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him. Others said he is Elijah, and still others claimed he is a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago. But when Herod heard this, he said, John, the man I beheaded, has been raised from the dead? For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested and had him bound and put in prison. So right now we're getting a flashback. This is not what's actually happening. We're getting a flashback into what happened because we were presented with John in chapter 1, and now we're getting an update on John's life. So let's go there. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, whom he married. So this dude is married to his sister-in-law, just putting that out there. For John had been saying to Herod, it is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife. So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but she was not able to, because Herod feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous man and a holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled, yet he liked to listen to him. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for the high officials, the military commanders, and the leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came in and danced, I just want to stop here for this moment. I've always wondered this. Herod is married to Herodias, okay? They're together. And he doesn't know that Herodias has a daughter. Like, I just do not get this moment here. Let's continue. She pleased Herod and his dinner guests. The king said to the girl, ask me for anything you want and I'll give it to you. And he promised her with an oath, whatever you ask, I will give you up to half my kingdom. She went out and said to her mother, what shall I ask for? The head of John the Baptist, she said. At once, the girl hurried into the king with the request, I want you to give me right now the head of John the Baptist on a platter. The king was greatly distressed, but because of his oath and his dinner guests, he did not want to refuse her. So he immediately sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. The man went out, beheaded John in the prison, and brought back his head on a platter. He presented it to the girl, and she gave it to her mother. On hearing of this, John's disciples came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. Jesus sends out his apostles, right? Everyone's hearing about this. In this area where Jesus is doing things, it's Galilee. Herod is the ruler there. He's a tetrarch, which means he's a ruler of a fourth. We're not really going to get into that. But he's king of this area, right? And so news is spreading about Jesus, all he's doing. People are telling rumors like, dude, this guy's driving out demons. He's like healing people. He's raising people from the dead, which is kind of weird. But this guy's doing it. Like, this is happening. And rumors start floating around like, who does this kind of stuff? Like, people in his hometown know him as a carpenter. But what is going on? And so people start saying things about him. And Herod hears this about him. And he's like, this can't be John. I killed John. And this gives you a little insight into the rulership that is in this area. That's Herod. What happened? Do you guys get what happened here? Herod is in this moment where he's with his brother's wife. That's kind of a tongue twister to say 5 times fast, but brother's wife, and is with her, and John is like, dude, that's not right. John was not one of those people who's like afraid to like tell you. He's like, oh, you're sinning. That's okay, Tanner. It's all right. You'll get over it someday. Yeah, no. He's like, dude, you're sinning and you need to repent now. And like, he like hits you in the face and he's like, come on, Jesus. You know, like he's saying there's a road before me and you guys need to follow him. And he's like blowing up and like, you need to follow this. He wasn't afraid of that. And that ticked Herodias off. Herodias is like, I want to kill this guy, you know, like, because she was enjoying the power that she had. She was enjoying this moment that she had. But then we have Herod's side of the story too. Herod liked John. It says that Herod enjoyed John. That whenever John said anything, he didn't exactly understand. He's like, I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand what quite you're saying. And we talked about this 2 weeks ago about how people perceive the word. And he's in this moment where he's trying to perceive the word. And he's like, I don't know, dude, but I like what you're saying. I know there's something here that you're saying. And so I'm going to protect you. And so every time Herodias tried to hurt John, she was unable to, until that opportune time came where Herodias' daughter started dancing, pleased John, and John's like, dude, Herod, thank you. Herod was like, dude, I'll give you whatever you want. And of course, her mom's like, dude, get John the Baptist's head. And she did. And so John was then presented with this moment, okay? Like, I don't know if you guys caught this, that you're just like, oh, he just beheaded John. No, there was this extreme moment in his mind that happened when she asked for John the Baptist's head. I'm going to tell you, okay? He had a choice. He could choose to behead John the Baptist, to hold on to his power, to look good in front of his people and his kingdom, that he made an oath and he's going to follow through with it because that's what a strong king does. Or he could give John's head over, or not give John's head over, sorry. He's going to be like, no, I don't care what you ask for. I made an oath to you, but forget it. There's life in these words that John is saying, and I don't care if you want his head, I'm protecting him because I'm king. But instead, that would have made him look weak because he broke an oath. Kings don't break oaths. So what did he do? Gave John the Baptist's head up. So I want you to know this right now. In Galilee, that's their ruler. This weak guy who can't see that life is in front of him and instead goes for what he wants. But there's another ruler. Next verse, wherever we are at. I don't even know. Thank you. 30. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. So right now the apostles are coming back. He sent them out. They are now back. We get a flash forward. Crazy. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. He said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. What Jesus is doing is actually a great thing. Whenever you send someone out to do something, like me and David do this all the time, where if I'm learning under David, if I'm the intern here and I'm learning how to come into a leadership role like David, we talk about what's going on. I'm like, hey, I don't know how to approach this situation. Should I say this? And he'll be like, you really shouldn't have said that. You say it like this and it'll be fixed. And like, he's teaching me as I'm doing these things, as I'm walking through these things, and he can mentor me as I see what I'm doing, as I actually do things. And that's what Jesus is trying to do. He's trying to get this moment with him, but this crowd is just crazy and like, Jesus! And like everyone's like gathering around and like, I love you, Jesus! And so they're like, okay, let's get away. And so they went by themselves in a boat into a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Imagine this situation. They get in a boat. They're on the lake, and there's just people just like fishing on the sideline, and they're like, dude, that's Jesus. Dude, go tell mom, we gotta go. And like, they're gathering up their family, like, we gotta go. And so like, everyone's getting like pumped up, and we're like, we gotta go. And they're running faster than the boat to beat them to where they're going. Like, it's nuts. And so this happens, and it says, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them. And this is the revolutionary thought of the night. Because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Do you realize what he said there? In his thought, in his head, he was like, dude, look at these people. I am God in flesh. And these are my people, and I've created them. But there's no fit ruler on this earth. And I'm sure he wasn't just thinking about the people in Galilee, the people in front of him, but he was thinking about the entire world, that the entire world is full of sheep without a shepherd. And he continues. So he began teaching them many things. By this time, it was late in the day, so his disciples came to him to this is a remote place, they said, and it is very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. That's actually a really good thought. We see that the disciples were kind of numbskulls like a week or two ago, like we saw that. Do you guys remember? Yeah, okay. And they're actually kind of maturing, They're like, hey, we're in this moment where there's nothing we have here. Let's let them go and get some food. They can come back later. We can teach them later. This is a good thing. But he answered to them, you give them something to eat. Imagine that moment. They do. They said to him, that would take 8 months of a man's wage. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? I want you guys to catch this. This is the most sarcastic and rude the disciples will almost ever be with Jesus up until this point. That they're in this moment, they're like, hey, let's send them away. They can go get some food. And Jesus just looks at him. He's like, you feed them. And they're like, and I'm sure like Andrew's just standing there. He's like, yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll do that. We got 800, 8 months of wage, Levi, you're a tax collector. You, of course, have it, right? Yeah, let's just go buy some bread. Yeah, we'll be back, Jesus. Yeah. And that's what they're basically saying is like, are you nuts? But he doesn't let it go. He says, how many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. Catch that. In this moment, in this life, we're all sheep without shepherds. Okay, sheep, I don't know if you guys know this, sheep are pretty dumb animals. Like, him calling us sheep is not a compliment, okay, by any means. And we're all sheep, and in this moment, he looks at his disciples and he's like, you know what? How much do you guys have to feed these people? And they're like, dude, we can't do this. We don't have this. And he's like, go find out how much you have. And there's going to be moments in your life where he's going to tell you to go do something, and you're going to come to him and you're like, Jesus, this is all I got. I've only got 5 loaves and 2 fish. And that's it. Like, I can't do this. And he's like, you're right, you can't do this. And that's what I want you guys to catch tonight. You cannot do it. There are going to be moments in your life where you think, I have the power to do this, when you don't. You cannot save yourself. You cannot satisfy yourself. You cannot meet your needs ever. And that's what he's trying to teach his disciples right now. That's what we need to catch, that these sheep are unable to satisfy themselves. Sheep can't take care of themselves. But God can. And he shows us his power, and he starts multiplying what little we have. And not only that, he does crazier things. Let's continue. We got to get through this point too. Wherever we are, immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up a mountainside to pray. He's probably tired. He's probably exhausted from splitting up loaves. I don't know. I would be. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was all alone on the land. he saw his disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the fourth watch of the night, he went out to them. Walking on the lake, he was about to pass by them. But when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down, and they were completely amazed. For they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed in just that place and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into the villages, towns, or countrysides, they placed the sick in the marketplace and begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed. I want you guys to catch this, that, he just did this miracle. He just split up loaves and stuff and fed people, and his disciples go out on this boat. They're straining at the oars, and Jesus walks on water to get to them, and he's like, "Hey, guys," and he's like dusting off his feet, and like, that's nuts. It's crazy. And what does it say about him? It says they were still confused about the loaves. Like their moment, like they're not even focusing on the fact that like, dude, we can't paddle this, dude. We're not getting anywhere. They're still on like, dude, he just split 5 loaves to 5,000 people. They're still there. They're still caught in this moment of we can't do this. And then he comes to them again. He's like, "No, I'm here. You can do this." And so that's us seeing him kind of revolt against the world that like we see that the powers of this world that we in our physical being can't do it. And he's like, "But I can provide." But there's another moment tonight. We're going through 2 chapters tonight, so buckle down. In chapter 7, we see him come against, not against, I guess, it's a bad word. Protest, revolt against the religious principalities that are set up. And he says this, so let's start in verse 1, chapter 7. The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem gathered around Jesus and saw some of the disciples eating food with hands that were unclean, that is, unwashed. So in this moment, Jesus is just here. He's like, healing people. And the Pharisees just crowd around him and they're like, "Hey, I see your disciples are eating with unwashed hands." And we're going to go into it. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing holding to the tradition of the elders. Then they come from the marketplace. They do not eat unless they wash. And they observe many other traditions such as washing cups, pitchers, and kettles. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, "Why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with unclean hands?" He replied, "Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites, as it is written, 'These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are but rules taught by men.' You have let go of the commands of God and are holding to the traditions of men." And he said to them, "You have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions." I don't know if you guys catch this, but Jesus is a little ticked off right now. Continue. "For Moses said, 'Honor your father and your mother, and anyone who curses his father or mother must be put to death.' But you say that if a man says to his father or mother, 'Whatever help you might otherwise have received from me is Corban,' that is a gift devoted to God. When you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother, thus you nullify the word of God by your own traditions and by tradition that you have handed down, and that you do many things like that." Again, Jesus called the crowd to him and said, "Listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a man can make him unclean by going into him. Rather, it is what comes out of a man that makes him unclean." After he had left the crowd and entered a house, his disciples asked him about this parable. Are you so dull, he said, or he asked? Don't you see that nothing that enters a man from the outside can make him unclean? For it doesn't go into his heart, but into his stomach, then out of his body. And saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. For he went on, what comes out of a man is what makes him unclean. For within, out of a man's heart come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and make a man unclean. You know, I'm sure in this moment, Jesus is a little upset. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can see that he's a little upset. And I'm sure his mind is still on the fact that, you know, the world are sheep without shepherds. And the people who should be leading him, he actually comes face to face with. And they ask him a stupid question about, hey, why aren't your disciples washing their hands? And you're like, well, isn't that the law? You know, they should be. No, this isn't the law put forth by God. This is more, they're trying to make themselves look good in front of the eyes of everybody. And he's like, no, you're wrong. You're missing the point. You're missing the heart of this. And I don't know if you guys have ever gotten in an argument with someone, but when you get in an argument, what do? You usually set up your points. You're like, point one, I'm going to talk about your spiritual life and your growth and how that's wrong. And then point two, we're going to discuss how we can fix this. And then point three, we're going to say this. And then I'm going to end with my final point. And your final point's usually something like, and you know what? You're a hypocrite. That's how Jesus starts his arguments. He's like, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. And everyone's like, he did not just do that. Oh, man. And like everyone's like, oh. And then he continues and he starts quoting scripture on them. These are the teachers of the law. They know this. And he's saying it about them. He's like, their lips worship me, but their hearts are far from me. He's like, did he just say that about us? He did not just say that about us. Like, in this moment, he is just coming at them. But here's the point he's trying to make. That I don't care if you're lost or otherwise, there is nothing good in you. That's his ultimate point, that there's nothing you can do to make yourself clean. There's nothing you can do on the outside to make yourself unclean either. It's all from your heart. Zechariah 3, there's a part where, you know, prophets, before they go before God, they spend time washing themselves. And one of the greatest prophets was Elijah. And Zechariah sees a vision of Elijah before God. And what does he see? He sees Elijah in the filthiest rags ever. Just covered in excrement. That's how he describes it. You are covered in just other people's waste. That is what you're covered in. And that's how disgusting you look before God. And what had Elijah been doing for weeks? He's been washing himself. He's been cleaning himself. And the best attempts you can do on the outside won't make you clean. You can't do it. And what does he say? What is the last thing he says? He says, from within, out of a man's heart comes, can we get there to the last part down? One more. Yeah, to 21. From without of a man's heart comes evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. These things come out of your heart. There's not a single person in this room in the world who this is not true about them. You're like, well, this is very encouraging, Chris. Thank you. But it's true. It's true. We see this moment where Jesus is kind of off the cuff and he's like, dude, nothing is good in this world. And that's straight up truth. That is exactly what's going on here. He says, you people are unreceptive to what I'm actually trying to say. We see it at the beginning with his hometown. We see it now with the Pharisees who are supposed to be the leaders of holiness in this place. He's like, dude, I'm done. You guys don't see it, but you guys are corrupt. I've come here to heal you, to bring you up, and you're just missing it. You're not getting it. You're like, dude, this is harsh, man. But chapter 7 doesn't end here. It doesn't. Let's continue. verse 24. There we are. Jesus left that place and went into the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an evil spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. So, catch moment, they clarify something. She is a Greek, Syrian Phoenicia. Mark's specifying that she is a Gentile, not a Jew, Gentile. Keep that in your mind. Next. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. If you're reading this correct, if anyone ever asks you, did Jesus ever call someone a dog? Yes, he did. True. All of the above. Right. He did that. He's calling her a dog. Like, I don't know if you guys caught that, missed that, whatever. He's saying, hey, you're a dog. It's not right for me to take from the children and give it to the dogs. And in this culture, in Jewish culture, who's the children? The Jews. The Jews, they're the children. They are the people who are at the table eating. And the Jews, like it or take it or leave it, they called the Gentiles dogs, which was just a feral beast that was out in the middle of nowhere that just ate scraps all day. And actually, a better term for dog here is puppy. He's calling her a puppy. And so Jesus, I think he's still in this moment where he's kind of still seeing, you guys are not good. Like, and this woman comes to him and doesn't even bring her daughter. And she's like, hey, can you take care of this moment, please? And he's like, it's not right for me to take from the children and give it to the dogs. And she comes back with this. She starts to argue, but in a totally different way we usually argue. Yes, she replied. Even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. What she's saying right there, we're going to stop for a moment. Is Jesus calling her dog? He's like, dude, I came for the Jews. That's who I came for. That's who I'm here for. It's not right for me to take from them and give it to the dogs, and she looks back and she starts to argue. And usually when you argue based on what you deserve. Instead, she argues on a totally different level. She argues on his mercy. She said, you're right. Yeah, I get that, Lord. She calls him Lord, first off. That's huge. But even the dogs under the table get the crumbs. What she's saying is like, I get that you're here for your people, that you're here for the chosen of God, but I know that you're good enough that the mercy that you have in you is going to overflow, that there is plenty, there is enough to reach me, a Gentile. And in Matthew it says that Jesus was amazed. He was blown away, and he's like, you're right. Go. You're good. And you still see this moment where you're still kind of like, dude, I don't know. I'm still feeling kind of like there's only evil in me. There's no good here. But I want you guys to catch this final moment in 7. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went down through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee, into the region of the Decapolis. There, some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged him to place his hand on the man. After he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ear, and then he spit, and then he touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven, and with a deep sigh said to him, Ephphatha, which means, be opened. At this, the man's ears were opened, and his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. The people were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. So what's going on in this moment? Like, a lot of people get caught up in the fact that, like, everyone's like, why did he touch his ears and then, like, touch his tongue and spit and then, like, like, what? And you're like, was that necessary for Jesus to do that? In order for Jesus to heal this person, was it necessary for all these theatrics? The answer is no. What was Jesus doing? He was doing sign language. This guy's deaf and mute, okay? This guy can't hear anything. Jesus could have immediately looked at the guy and been like, hey, healed. And the guy would have been like, I can hear everything and I can talk now. This is crazy. He could have done that. But that wouldn't have reached his heart. That wouldn't have reached him deep inside of his core. And so Jesus comes up close, puts his fingers in the man's ear, spits, touches his tongue. And what is the first thing this guy hears? Ephphatha, be opened. So I want you guys to hear this. You know, you see that we are a world, we are a sheep without shepherds, that we are broken and hurting, and yet, in that moment, God does not label us amongst the crowd. He does not just lump us in this group of evil, done, I'm done with you guys. He comes to each and every one of us differently. That every miracle in the world that he has ever done, every way he's ever talked to you, looked at you, said something to you, done a miracle in your life is completely unique to your life. That he cares about you deeply. He does the same with these people. And so I want you guys to catch this, that there's this overwhelming darkness here, but what does he do? He comes and he takes all that darkness to the cross. And you're like, and he covers everything, and you're like, okay, great. But not just that he covers everything. He thought of each and every one of you by name, by thought, by strand of DNA. Said, but I love you anyway. I wasn't sure I was going to tell this story, but I heard it the other day. There's this guy. I don't know if you guys were around during the 1992 Olympics. I was just born. Thank you. It was a good year, actually. There's this guy. His name's Derek Redmond. He's a runner. He's from Great Britain, and he was kind of a fresh runner. People weren't really expecting him to get gold or anything. They really weren't even expecting silver. They were thinking maybe he might place. He might. But as the prelims started up, he started placing in every race. He passed all the prelims, all of these moments. And so people are looking at him like, dude, have you seen Derek Redmond, dude? This guy is awesome. And everyone's pumped about Derek Redmond. And all the crowds are like, Derek Redmond, yeah! And so it's the final race. It's the final 400 meter in the Olympics that year, okay? Derek's in lane 5, okay? Gun goes off. There's no hesitation. Everyone starts going. They go around the first turn, and you see it. You see Derek Redmond's he's going to place. He's got this, dude. He's running. And he's at the point where the ribbon is right in front of him, and immediately he grips his leg. And if you see the interview with him, the first word he says is he thought he had been shot. And he falls down on the ground, and he's writhing in pain, and he's crying like a baby. And everyone just steps back, and they're like, whoa. And he looks up, and he remembers, oh, I'm at the Olympics. And so people start coming around him like, dude, what's wrong, what's wrong? And he starts fanning people off because he knows if anyone touches him, he's disqualified. And he realizes, I pulled my hamstring. And so he immediately gets up, and he limps 50 meters and still doesn't make it. And he falls back on the ground, and you see this crowd gather around him, and everyone is quiet in the stadium. And through this crowd, you see this shorter man pushing past the security guards. And there's these big guys, and there's a small man, and he's pushing past. And Derek's on the ground again, and this guy comes over and wraps his arms around Derek. And he picks him up, and he puts his arm around him. He's like, it's okay, son. And you realize this guy's Derek's father. And he's like, you don't have to do this. We can get off. You're good. We're going to take care of you. And he's like, no, Dad, I got to do this. I've got to do this. He says, like, okay, then put your weight on me and we're going to finish this. And they limp the finishing 50 meters of that race. And as soon as he crosses the line, he gets a standing ovation. I want you guys to catch something. You guys, every single one of you in this room, has a Father in heaven who loves you that much. That you're going to try and run a race. You're going to try and come to him with everything you have, and you're going to be like, I don't have enough. I can't do this. He's like, that's great. Let me carry you. Let's pray together. Dear Lord, I thank you for this time that we could come here, that we could praise your name, Lord, that we could have amazing worship in you, by you, and for you, Lord. Lord, that I ask that in all of these kids' lives that you can be in them, that you can teach them, that you can show them that you love them deeply and dearly, Lord, and that they would remember that every single day of their lives, Lord. Lord, do not let anyone leave this place without that knowledge, Lord. We love you and we thank you.